Alrighty, what's up, competitors? Hope you guys are having a great week. We are back at you with the state of the game for the month of August. So, we've got a really good stream set up for you guys today. It's going to look a lot like state of the games of the past with a couple changes. So, we'll go over all of that here in just a second. For now, though, we're going to give people a moment to trickle on in, and then we will get started shortly after that. So, bear with me for a minute. I'm going to hang out, shoot some of these Batianas. Please forgive me for not having the best aim. I'm no Dastro out there. But we're going to get started here in just a second. Again, giving people just a minute to trickle on in, and then we will get going. Seeing a comment in the chat that it's not live, so hopefully you got that worked out, Vanitas. Just in case, though, again, we're going to give people just a minute to come on in, and then we'll get started with this thing. So I'm going to do my best while the stream is going on to run around and show you guys some of Mizuku Island. Keep in mind, though, that it's hard to look at notes, run around, show you stuff all at once. So I'm going to prioritize the talking part, and we'll get in as much of a tour of the island here in the process as we can. So we'll give people just one more minute, then I'm going to get started, and we'll be good to go. While I'm running around, one thing that we'll talk about quite a bit in the stream that I wanted to point out is that the movement of our character, the locomotion, is looking really nice, and it's a big change from anything that you've seen in the past. This was a big addition to Compete that we made in the form of a metahuman integration. Again, we're going to talk a lot about that in the stream today. But something I wanted to point out right off the bat is that we do have these really nice new crispy animations that have really upped our game quality quite a bit. So I am going to get started here today. I think we're going to start this off from the top of the hotel. So let me climb on up here. Give ourselves a nice view, and then I will introduce the stream to you all. As you can see, we've got some nice mantling going on there. Okay, so welcome to the August State of the Game and AMA. As I mentioned earlier, this is Ethan from Compete. As always, it's really good to get the chance to connect with you guys. So as you can see on my screen, and I've mentioned, we've got our boots on the ground in Mizuku Island here. We recently completed the first section of Mizuku Island called the Genesis section. And so as I'm going through the stream today, I'm going to be running around and showing you guys as much of that as I can. So we'll take a stroll through. You can take a look at all the progress that we've made. And I think you should be pretty impressed. Before we get started on the stream today, I do want to give you guys a rundown of how the stream is going to go. As I just mentioned, it's going to be a little bit different than what we've done previously. So, as always, the goal for today is to provide you guys with as much value as possible. And I also want to be respectful of your time. So, we're going to try to get through this stream in about 30 or 45 minutes. And we should be good with that. I think we're going to hit it. So, in the past week, we have gotten a ton of really great AMA questions that have been submitted by you all. I do want to spend a majority of that 30 or 45 minutes on those AMA questions, so definitely expect that in the second half of the stream. By answering those questions, we're going to get you all the latest news on Compete. You're going to get the inside scoop on how development is going, and we'll also give you guys a preview of where we're headed next, which I know you guys are all really curious to learn. So we're going to touch on everything in those questions, from gameplay to game economy to our marketing plans, as well as our plans to scale up a player base in the future. Man, crashing through those windows never gets old, by the way. So that's what the second half of the stream looks like. Before we do get there, though, I want to use this first segment as a bit of a chance to zoom out and make sure that we're all on the same page about what the vision is here for Compete, where we're at now, and where we see the path forward. So from the team's perspective, the state of the game for Compete has honestly never been better. Our playtests have continued to give us the feedback we need to continue improving the game. The response from those of you guys who have had the chance to play with us has been overwhelmingly positive, which is really, really awesome to see. And in general, we are super happy with the progress that we're making. So in general, we couldn't be more excited for the coming months. There is a lot of pieces that are coming together, a lot of hard work that's really going to all kind of culminate in this big rollout of our game economy and then thereafter of our player base. So when I look back to where we were at just a year ago, our team is really, really proud of the progress that we've made. And as we move forward, I would encourage you to kind of project out a year ahead based on what we've already done as to where we could take this game. And I think that we have proven that we can deliver a AAA quality product. And so hopefully you guys see that and you're excited about where this heads next. So in the spirit of being excited about where this heads next, I do think that there is a lot of people out there who are feeling the momentum that we're gaining as a project. And I think it's fair to say that the team is feeling it too. So inevitably, there's a lot of enthusiasm out there and there's a desire to hit the gas and to start going. And so what I want to do is kind of give you guys some insight as to how we envision that path forward as we continue to grow the game. So first, I want to nail down exactly what we're trying to build here. So Justin's vision for Compete has always been to build a game that solves a lot of the persistent barriers to entry that currently, right now, are keeping hundreds of millions of players from being able to play the most popular game modes in the world with their friends. These barriers include lack of crossplay, especially with mobile, paid yearly releases and or pay-to-win mechanics that are really unfair to the average gamer, no ability to trade your cosmetics or carry them over year to year. And what makes these pain points even worse is that with every new game or every iteration of the same game, aka those yearly releases, you are starting with an empty inventory and a brand new grind with nothing to show for anything that you've done before in your gaming career. And so Compete solves these problems by being an all-in-one game where players can compete against their friends in some of their favorite game modes, climb the ranks, build clout, grow their collection of cosmetics, and really have the chance to generate real value as they build their gaming legacy. So that's what we're trying to build here. And the market has already shown that these games are really successful. So games like Roblox, Fortnite, Grand Theft Auto, these have become some of the most popular games by taking this all-in-one approach. So the market has shown that there is this growing demand for deeper character progression and for a longer, more meaningful grind. This is the type of experience that we want to offer with Compete. So we're looking to provide substitutable quality, realistic multiplayer experiences for that initial set of 4 game modes, which you're probably familiar with already. That would be Blitz Royale, which is our take on a battle royale, kart racing, golf, and basketball. So just to reiterate this, these game modes that I just mentioned collectively have hundreds of millions of players who really have no opportunity right now to trade their cosmetics, to play cross-play with mobile, or to have a unified progression system and start collecting those rewards, which they can use across multiple game modes. So this is what we're trying to build, and we should be on the same page now as to what the vision is for Compete. So the next question ultimately becomes, where do we get there, or how do we get there? What do we have left to do? So with the integration of the UE MetaHuman, which I mentioned earlier, we're enjoying those nice, smooth, crispy animations on the screen now. This was the latest and probably biggest step forward in this regard. And it's something that I'm going to touch on in the AMA. But this is really the kind of quality that we're going to need to deliver a AAA game that is competitive in the market. So we've got the MetaHuman in. We've got the Genesis section of Mizuku done. And you're probably wondering, okay, well, what comes next? So on the heels of all this really awesome progress that we've been making, we're also in the midst of wrapping up the final polishing touches of our game economy. And the future of Compete and our ability to scale Compete really hinges on our ability to deliver this game economy and to deliver something that is a high quality that people actually want to use. So that's been a huge focus for us in the last year. And the really good news is that we are almost there. So later this week, we'll give you some more details on the release of our first cosmetic. And after that, you're going to be able to expect to see a number of those subsequent cosmetics roll out in the near future after. We're also putting the polishing touches on our reward progression system, starting with the chapter ticket, which is Compete's version of a battle pass. In the interest of time, I'm not going to get into the specifics on how the chapter ticket works. But if you are curious on how any of the game economy is structured, I would really recommend that you go check out our website. We've got a great game economy page, as well as an infographic that's linked at the bottom of that page. So for the latest update on our progress with the game economy, here's what it looks like. This week, the internal testing team is ensuring that the ticket system is successfully attributing XP and delivering the appropriate rewards. So in theory, what this means, or in practicality, what this means is that when you load into a game of Compete, depending on how well you play, you accumulate game experience. That game experience needs to be added to your overall tally. And then when you hit certain XP levels within the chapter ticket, we need to make sure that you're actually receiving those rewards and that those rewards are able to be used. So that's what we have implemented already. As I mentioned, it's in the testing process this week. If all goes well, that should be good and we can move on from it. Otherwise, there may be a few bugs to clean up. But we are really in the end stages of all this. So I am going to get into more specifics on the game economy and our plans for the rollout. This was a really good question that came up in the AMA. But for now, just know that that is the biggest priority that we have in building Compete. So the next question that we get a lot is when player base. I think this is the most common question that we get actually. And it's a really good one. It's obviously a good one. And it's something that I think everyone is looking forward to, most of all the devs. We've been building this game for coming on 3 years now. And the ultimate destination here is to have a huge player base of players that are coming in, having fun, collecting cosmetics, interacting with that secondary marketplace. That is the big vision here. So I get why people are really excited and anxious to do it. And the playtests are great in the interim, but we do know that hours are limited and that the game is not easily accessible. So know that we are hustling as fast as we can to bring in that player base, but also know that there is a correct order of operations that we're following. The whole playtest thing is really standard in game development. It's kind of one of the critical pieces of the puzzle. And we're not going to rush into anything unprepared. So as I mentioned, we're excited as anyone to have the servers buzzing with a lot of attention. But what we really do need to have is the game monetized and easily accessible in order to survive at scale. So I want to go into a little bit of detail about that. So in terms of monetizing the game, we'll roll out the game economy with our founder's jacket as the first cosmetic available in our Divine Shop. Then from there, we're obviously going to move on to the chapter ticket and the fame rewards, which I had mentioned. Once we've got a number of cosmetics in circulation, we'll bring the Bazaar online. That'll be followed up by the claim system, which importantly allows players to convert those Web 2 cosmetics into NFTs that are going to be able to be traded with Compete token on our secondary marketplace. And after that, we'll work to integrate Polygon ZK EVM to reduce those transaction costs and bring down some of that remaining friction in the marketplace. So there is a lot on the table. Luckily, as I mentioned, we've gotten through a bulk of the work to make this happen. But that is kind of the general flow of events as we see it in regards to monetization. So while this is all happening, we'll also, of course, be continuing to work hard on optimizing our mobile builds, which I would say is the other big main priority that we have at the moment. So we've still got a couple of weeks of work left there before we expect it to be a stable experience on those mid-tier powered phones. But we are making really good progress in that regard. On the PC side of things, it's clear that we we'll need to utilize at least one of the popular game launchers to make the game more easily accessible to the masses. Right now, using our own launcher, it's kind of slow. It's a little error prone. It's definitely not perfect. It's serving us well for the play tests and what we need it for, but inevitably we will look to grow into one of those more widely accessible, reliable game launchers in the very near future. So just as a note on those game launchers, we have started the listing process with Epic Games and with Steam. This doesn't mean that it's happening next week or anything like that, but I did just want to add that in there as a note to let you guys know it's something that we're working on. It's definitely in our sights, and it'll be here before you know it. So as to how we see this process of scaling the player base up, I want to get into some of the specifics in the AMA, but as this section here is more about the big picture overview, one thing that I did want to mention is that there is no A plus B equals C formula here. The gaming market is unpredictable. The marketing meta, it changes often. And really, there are no guarantees that what worked yesterday is going to be what works tomorrow. And, with 20 plus years of marketing experience between Connor and Justin, and with a really big depth of knowledge as to the gaming market, what people want, what's in right now, all those kind of considerations, I do think that we are really well prepared here to come up with a strategy and to adjust that strategy as needed. And we're feeling really confident about it. So in terms of reasons that we feel confident, there's actually a couple of other ones that I wanted to add as well. So number one, and I think this is most important, we've built the foundations of a great game. It's fun to play. People have a good time playing it. Those who are able to make the play tests have been making a habit to come back and play. We'll give a special shout out to Hash, to Seaside, and to Crypto Knight, 3 guys who have been here from the start, logged probably at least 1,000 games with us. And that's a really good sign that what we're building here has some staying power. People have fun with it. And that's the biggest reason that we're confident. Number 2, our BR is already totally polished. Kart racing is just in need of a couple touch-ups, and then a few extra tracks to really kind of keep the gameplay fresh for players. Golf and basketball are well into development, which we'll talk about in the AMA. Those are going to be ready for beta access soon. All these game modes have, again, hundreds of millions of players that are looking for solutions to very real problems that Compete solves. So that's another reason that we're confident. Next reason that we're confident, I'll be honest here, we've got a kick-ass team. Okay, I'm going to brag on them for a second here. We have been pretty much the same core group of guys for almost 3 years now. I will tell you, everyone on the team is extraordinarily dedicated to this project and to seeing this game succeed. They are wildly talented, which obviously helps. And maybe more importantly, we have well-established pipelines that have brought our development speed to be really, really efficient. Okay, so that's important. We get more done with about 30 core devs than I think a lot of game studios get done with 3 to 4 times that number. And it's because, again, we have a team that works really well together. They've stuck around and really seen this build out from the start. And the vibes are good on our team, and they're super talented at what they do. So for that reason, we're definitely confident. Next point is that we do have a couple of tricks up our sleeve to encourage content creators to share Compete with their audience. And a lot of that's going to involve leveraging that decentralized game economy. Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there. We'll get into a little bit of it in the AMA, and then we'll leave a little bit of it as a surprise for somewhere down the line. So keep that in mind. Just because you haven't heard us say it out loud doesn't mean it's not in the plans. There is a little bit of value to the element of surprise in all this, so keep that in mind as well. With all that said, I'm going to wrap this up by coming back to where we started. From the team's perspective, the state of the game for Compete is really strong, and honestly, we've never been more bullish about the future. And really, I do mean that. So if you followed this project for a while, you'll likely know that we don't take shortcuts. We are always willing to put in the time and money necessary to bring us to the next level. And I know that in the future, that's going to pay big dividends for us. So we've been grinding for almost 3 years straight. The pieces are continuing to fall into place. So for now, nothing changes. We're going to keep our head down. We're going to keep grinding. And eventually we will get to the point where we have fully executed that vision that Justin came up with 3 years ago and brought us all together to build. So, again, head down and grind from us. We're going to continue to remain patient. We're going to continue to avoid the temptation to try to force anything that's not ready. We are right on track. And as always, we are so grateful for all your guys' support. Really, it means the world to us. It gives us the confidence and it gives us the encouragement that we need to keep building at the pace that we're building. And really, it is just, it has been such a blessing for us. So if you're watching this, thank you. I think the most important thing to do now, though, is to get into the AMA questions. I want to keep this stream moving. So let's get right into them. Again, I'm going to keep running around the map here. We're going to give you a really thorough view here. I think we've seen all the major POIs, but maybe we'll head out to the country club and give you guys a look over there. If you do want to follow along with these AMA questions, I did pin them in a set of images in Telegram yesterday, and you can also find them in the announcements section of Discord. So if you did want to follow along with them, you can do it there. Again, I could talk about these all day, but I think to be most valuable and respectful of your time, it's better for me to try to be as concise as possible. So that's going to be the focus today. I think we can do it. As always, if there are questions that come up during the responses to the AMAs, you're always encouraged to reach out to us via Telegram or Discord. And one last thing, thank you so much to everyone that submitted these questions. It really is a privilege to have the opportunity to present them here today. So let's get right into it. First question, our first set of questions is in regards to gameplay and development. So I believe this was Bill's question, who said, I have 3 suggestions on Resurrection. What do you think? Number 1, the length of Resurrection should progressively go up every death or throughout the game. Number 2, the time of Resurrection should start when the player is down and not when they die, because otherwise there's no incentive for the opponent to finish you off. Question 3, or point 3 that he made, is that players should come back with a small gun or make the axe more powerful so that they have some sort of chance when the final circle has no loot in it. So for this one, I went straight to the boss, to Mr. Dastro himself. As to point number 1, Dastro says the length of redemption already does go up through the game. It starts at 10 seconds, and by the end of the game, it ends at 30 seconds. So in his opinion, it feels pretty good for now. As to your second point, he said it could help. It's something to consider in the future. He will say, though, that there is some incentive to finish people off, seeing as damage and eliminations that you would earn are both contributing towards the XP that you get for those progression systems. And for number 3, he said sometimes the circle does miss a little bit with this. He's definitely considering a change in the future to address it. For right now, though, his only take is that you already spawn back in, which is pretty much unheard of for a BR. And there's still a lot of loot in general. So this could include from teammates that have also died. It could include other opponents that your teammates have killed. There's definitely some strategy involved, and it's not a perfect scenario where you're always going to be running and gunning. But the opportunity is there to get creative. So on one last note, Dastro did want me to let you know that he thinks the axe is actually super overpowered right now. He got a triple kill with it 2 days ago. So if anything, you may just need to brush up on your axe skills a little bit. Next question, how is the development of basketball and golf going, and can we get a video soon? So really good question. Development is going really great for both of these game modes. I've mentioned this before in the past, but just to restate it, both of these game modes have been in development for well over a year now. So we've got a lot of stuff already built. We've got the gameplay loops, the HUDs, the game logic, the environment. All this stuff is pretty much ready to go. The biggest hurdle that we were really waiting to clear was on the metahumans itself, which allows us to really make some pretty major strides in regards to our animations. So the good news is that we have been filming and prepping those animations for well over a year now. We've leaked a couple of short previews of the golf and basketball animations along the way, if you want to go find those. But we do have a huge catalog that are recorded from high quality, in a high quality from professional athletes. And with the introduction of MetaHuman, those animations are now a lot more efficiently used. So instead of a huge multi-day process to clean up the animation and to adjust it for all the different morph sizes, without getting into all the technical weeds too much, the introduction of the MetaHuman allows us to use those animations that we've been working so hard to record a whole lot easier. So it's going to save us an unbelievable amount of time, and it's also going to increase the end product quality. So we're really excited about the MetaHumans. In fact, we did start implementing some of those basketball animations into the game this week. Adam was messing with one of the dunks yesterday afternoon. He sent me a video. It's looking badass, excuse my language. So as soon as we're ready, we'll get a video out. We're not feeling super rushed to do it. We don't want to put out a video that anyone feels let down by or doesn't represent our final quality. So just be patient with us. Know that we are definitely making good progress on it. And as soon as we're ready, we'll definitely get you some video clips of it. And the same goes with golf. So really the answer to both of those is pretty much the same. Next question is, are you guys planning to implement AI? Interesting question. I think this makes a lot of sense with all the buzz around AI recently. So I think in general, as a company, we'd like to use AI as much as we can to make our workflows more efficient. But we also aren't going to go out of our way to try and implement AI where it's not necessarily needed. So I do know most of our team uses ChatGPT one way or another for the basic stuff that you might imagine. I know some of our developers have also started using AI tools to help speed up some of the more basic programming tasks. Lastly, I can speak to this one directly. Our motion capture setup does use AI to process the 3D mapping of the camera data that we send it. So that's pretty cool. And in general with the AI, we're going to continue to monitor it, and we will definitely take advantage of it wherever we can. So moving on next, how is mobile development? iPhone release soon on test flight. Mobile development's been chugging along. It's been going really well. As you know, about a month ago, we did release an early beta for our Android build. And that was basically just to get some feedback on how it was performing in the over 60 different Android phones that are floating around in the world these days. Really, there's not an easy way to do this other than to just kind of put the build out there and see what happens. So that's what we did. One thing that we did overlook was that the majority of the target market that we selected for this beta testing, which was chosen because it was the most affordable, which should make sense, mostly had phones that weren't really powerful enough to run the beta at a high quality. So that was an oversight on our part, but nonetheless, we were able to accomplish what we wanted to out of it, which was to get a whole bunch of information and data that's going to guide our devs into what is most important to optimize next for our mobile build. So we do expect that in the next few weeks, we'll have the next version of our beta build out. I'm not sure exactly how we'll distribute it. I don't know if we've decided on that yet. But what I can tell you is that we expect it to provide a noticeable increase in performance for those higher end phones, as well as a lot of much needed stability for those more medium tier phones. So it's definitely going to make a big impact. Our devs are working really hard on that right now as one of the two major priorities that I mentioned earlier. And we will definitely keep you updated on how that's going. And one last note on the mobile optimizations, just to give you guys kind of a benchmark as to how we're looking at this. Right now, Justin's S23 Ultra runs Compete online at about 30 frames per second on that initial beta build. So we're looking to roughly double that in order to start being competitive with other AAA mobile experiences. And those mid-tier phones should eventually be able to run Compete at about 45 frames a second or more, which would be a really good accomplishment and would put us right at the top of the pack. So in general, we're trending in the right direction there with mobile. It's going to be a little bit more work to get it where we want it to be, but nothing that we can't handle. So that is for mobile. Next question, do you guys have plans to secure or raise funds for long-term development, venture capitalists or gaming companies? This is a good question, definitely reasonable, and it's something that I've touched on a couple of times in the past, but I think it's always important to reiterate a few different points in this regard. So number one thing to say is that I don't want there to be any assumption out there that raising new funds is somehow necessary to keep growing in the long term, and especially not in the short term. So that's not necessarily a correct assumption. As far as the funding itself, we are a private business, so we're not going to get into any of the specific financials of how the business is structured. But I would just say that Justin has bootstrapped this business with his own funds for 3 years now, to the tune of $1 million, well over $1 million at this point. And his ability to continue doing this hasn't changed. So, of course, there is a case to be made that funding would be beneficial with the more is better mentality type of thinking. But I would just caution that this line of thinking is a little bit surface level, and I don't think that it fully takes into reality, or it's not fully in tune with all the realities of scaling a business. So, of course, our goal is to continue growing and scaling Compete to be as successful a game as possible. I think that should go without saying. That growth, though, in order to be to take us to the highest ceiling, needs to be done in a way that's efficient and sustainable. So it needs to be done tactfully. In the end, we're going to do whatever we can in order to ensure that we are successful. As for funding, if need be, we do have offers already for whenever we would determine it is best to take people up on that opportunity. Right now, we're happy with our pace of development. We're running a really efficient crew, a really lean business. And so it's not a near-term necessity that we go out and get funding. It's definitely something that we're considering, though, and we'll continue to kind of add in as part of our equation. So hopefully that gives you some insight there. Next set of questions is going to be on accessibility. So first question in that regard, beyond Epic Games and Steam, there are a ton of Web3 game launchers that are coming. Are you noticing those to see where it could be a good fit? Yes, definitely. We've noticed a ton of Web3 game launchers. I think personally, there's no doubt that this is a great sign that Web3 gaming is here to stay. Really encouraged by seeing all of these different platforms come to market and try to, make their mark. I think that's awesome. That being said, I think there's a few too many of them right now, and they're still competing for what is in reality a very small market. So I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of these game launchers that don't make it. Of course, rooting for as many to be successful as possible, but that is the reality of the marketplace, I think. So we are watching to see which ones take hold and gain real traction in the marketplace. And I don't want to rule out that we wouldn't host Compete on one or even more than one of those in the future. That being said, there are costs and downsides to everything, including adding additional game launchers. So let me give you a little bit of background on that. The biggest thing to keep in mind is that Compete is a live service game, and as such, we push updates often. And you've probably noticed this if you follow the project. That's not going to change. So those updates need to be approved by each launcher that the game is hosted on. And players must all be on the same version of the game in order to play multiplayer successfully. So what this means, without getting into all the weeds of it, is that we are basically tethered to the slowest platform to approve our build before we can push it out to anyone. Inevitably, that means that the more platforms that we include in this approval process, the stickier it gets, the more friction there potentially becomes. And this is something that we really need to be mindful of. So it is a cost-benefit analysis that we're doing. The number of players who only use Ultra right now, as an example, is a pretty minuscule portion of our target market, if they even exist at all. And most players will happily jump on Steam or Epic to play a game they see or hear about. So again, in the near term, it's not really a huge priority. But then again, if there is one that gobbles up a big portion of the player base and has been successful, it seems like a no-brainer that we would want Compete to be in the mix there as well. So moving on, next question. Do you know when you will monetize the game and release it to be live to play 24 hours a day? So that's a really good question. We expect that the rollout of our game economy is going to happen over the next couple of months or so. I mentioned this earlier, but it's going to obviously start with our first cosmetic ever, that Founder's Jacket in the Divine Shop. And that's going to be where this whole thing kicks off. In the weeks that follow, again, I went through this earlier, but there are going to be a number of additional cosmetics available for players to start collecting. We also have a few fun surprises related to the cosmetics in store for our community, a few one-of-one type cosmetic opportunities. And in general, that's kind of the initial first play for us. From there, we're going to roll out the chapter ticket, which will introduce the first opportunity to grind for cosmetics while playing Compete. From there, we'll introduce the fame reward system, which again is that play to earn style cosmetics grind. From there, we'll go to the bazaar, then the claim system, and then the integration with Polygon's ZK EVM. So we're not going to put a hard date on all of this stuff more than probably a week or so in advance. So I don't have any specific timeline on where all those different moving pieces are going to, in the end, put us. But I think in general, it's safe to say that we're feeling motivated to get it done as quickly and efficiently as possible. So it's definitely not something we're sitting on. We definitely, we're not going to sit around and wait. But at the same time, we're not going to feel super rushed. We want it to be to the quality level that we know you guys are expecting, and that certainly we're expecting as well. So, yeah, that's kind of how we're looking. As far as when the game is going to be accessible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it already is. The issue, of course, is that we don't have a player base where 15 people are searching at any given time to play. Part of this is because of the play tests. It's a little bit self-inflicted. But really, this is all very standard operating procedure when you're building a game. So, if you're not next iteration of Madden or the next iteration of FIFA or a game that the world has been waiting for the last 3 years to come out, the whole play testing to make sure that all the bugs are ironed out and then the eventual scaling up of a player base happens a little bit more organically. It happens a little bit more over time. And so, in that sense, we are right in line with what our expectations were and with, what the industry kind of suggests is the norm. So that is the answer to that. Next question is, when could we see PlayStation or Xbox? Short answer, as soon as Compete is accessible, running nicely on PC and mobile platforms. At that point, we're going to be excited to switch gears and move into the console ports. The process itself for porting to those consoles, it's not overly complicated. In fact, we've started it. It's just a matter of the best timing for us as a business, really. And so I would say that if everything goes perfectly, there's a small chance that you could see them by the end of the year. But I wouldn't, bet on this, and I wouldn't hold us to that 100%. There's just too many variables to really know this early out exactly when that'll happen. But definitely, as soon as we can make it happen, we're going to do that. So next question moves us on to the character. So the character question starts off with, now that we have metahumans, what's next for the female character and facial expressions? Well, the next step, frankly, is to implement both of those things. So the female character is a big priority for us. I'm sure you guys have heard us say this before if you've been following it. It's also a massive project with a ton of animation work to retarget everything that we've done to a female-specific skeleton. So we've got to re-rig all the clothing that we've created for the female also, which takes time. The fact that we are working with Metahuman as our character means that some of this work is going to be a lot easier to do than it would have otherwise. On the flip side, though, keep in mind that because we just updated our character, there's a lot of work for the female that's going to have to be redone to fit this new, better character. So a little bit of a trade-off there, but one that we see is definitely worthwhile. We've got that as a medium priority at the moment. For facial expressions, largely the same story. There's definitely some work to be done. Get out of my way, man. I had to take him out real quick. There's definitely some work to be done to optimize the facial expressions. There's also a UI component to allow people to select which one they want, to collect them, to store them. These things have a little bit more depth than you might realize at first glance. And so, again, medium priority. We definitely would like to do it sooner than later, but it's not something that we're losing sleep over at night right this second to do. So expect to see it soon. When exactly, I don't have a better date for you. Okay, moving on to the next question. How many metahumans can we expect, and are we going to get new hairstyles? This is a cool question. This is something that I'm really excited about. We have 20 metahumans set up right now that are going to be integrated to the game over time. So Ricky, I believe, was the name of the first metahuman, aptly named by Justin. Ricky was our first metahuman ever to be implemented into the game. As I mentioned, we've got, I think, 19 others. This is going to range a whole bunch of different looks, ethnicities, styles. You guys could probably imagine somewhat of what it's going to look like. But that's going to happen over time. From there, we'll probably grow it into the future, even maybe more than 20. The cool thing about MetaHuman is that you can create characters pretty easily. It's just a matter of getting them into the game. So a lot of potential for us there. As for the hairstyles, we have about 30 made for the male characters. And we're in the process of building out a deeper library for the female characters as well. So I want to say we have about a dozen hairstyles for the women set up. And we'll continue to add to that. One thing that I did want to mention about the hair is how happy we are with our team at the quality that they've been able to put out. So I would encourage anyone, just go load up NBA 2K, any other sports simulation game really, and compare our hairstyles. We've spent a lot of time on them, and they're a really high quality. So we're excited about those. We hope you are too. Definitely something that we want to lean into and continue to add on to, in the future. Moving on, the next question about the character. Does MetaHuman change things for basketball and golf? In short, yes, MetaHuman completely changes our ability to make a high-quality sports simulation game. I want to give you guys a little bit of extra background on this because I think it's really interesting and kind of highlights one of the big reasons that we feel we're going to be able to make a big impact in the gaming world. So for these sports game modes specifically, the quality of gameplay is really largely based on the number of unique animations that are integrated into the game, which provide that really realistic experience. Okay, so by using metahumans, as I mentioned earlier, we have the ability to integrate our own custom recorded from a professional animations for all these different game modes, and it's really not that much work. I mean, it's work, but it's not. We need a studio of 100 animators to put together a dozen basketball animations, which would have been the case as recently as 5-10 years ago. So with the use of this metahuman and also paired with our motion capture setup that we have, we're able to work with a fraction of the development resources and put out a quality of animations and therefore a quality of gameplay that is really competitive with those bigger studios. So we're definitely going to leverage that. This is one of the reasons that we're able to run so lean as a game development studio, is that we are really efficient with these pipelines, and the animation and metahuman pipeline is really a good example of that. So none of this would be possible to do at a high level without the metahumans. That was the big reason that we took the huge jump forward in order to integrate that. Of course, it would have been easier not to and to just go forward with what we had. But Justin doesn't settle for anything less than the best, which is one of the reasons that I'm convinced we're going to be so successful. Next question is, how much potential is there for better movement or graphics with the character? So as you probably noticed, the movement quality of our character, as you can see on the screen here, has dramatically improved with the switch to MetaHuman. It really is a night and day difference. Watching the reaction of all the playtesters and of you guys, the community, when we did unveil it, was so rewarding, to be honest. It was really great. One thing I'll say is that changing the character and locomotion system for a game, especially that's as built out as Compete, is really not an easy thing to do. The analogy that I used the other day with someone was that it's similar to trying to replace a load-bearing wall on the first floor of a 20-story building. Okay, it's possible, but it's a lot of work. There's risks involved. Really, the character and the locomotion system touch pretty much every corner of our game. So this was a big deal for us. Again, I've said it a few times now, but it was a ton of work. And the reason that we did it is because it allows for all of this better movement. Now, as far as the potential from here, you can see that there's a little bit of work that we can do with the running animation. There's definitely some cleanup to be done. I wouldn't consider these to be, final draft ready. They're never going to be polished any further or updated in the future. But what this should be is a pretty good starting point for you guys to understand where we're taking this. So definitely a little bit of improvement, or room for improvement, I should say. But overall, we're looking pretty good. So I wouldn't expect it to change too much more than it has already. Let's see. Next question. What is your strategy for rolling out the cosmetics in the shop? Certain categories, variations, etc. So I went through our rollout plans for the game economy a couple of times already. So I'm going to skip over that part and hope that you caught it the first time. As for the variations and categories, we're going to release more information on this soon. Part of it is also going to be a surprise because there is value in the element of surprise, of course. But if you do want to see kind of a big picture overview as to the rarities, you can easily see that on our game economy page. There's 6 different classifications. Of course, divine rarity is going to be the highest, the most rare, most exclusive, and is Web3 only. Categories on the bazaar are going to match the locker categories in the game. There's still a few other types of cosmetics that we haven't announced yet, by the way, which will have their own separate categories. But generally, they would be what you would imagine. The shirt, the shoes, the pants, the gliders, the carts, the weapon wraps, all that kind of stuff. But definitely stay tuned. As we start to roll out this game economy, you're going to see a few styles of cosmetics, categories of cosmetics that we haven't really mentioned anything about quite yet. So definitely keep an eye out there. Next question, is the chapter ticket specific to the Blitz Royale, or are you going to implement it into other game modes? That's a good question. It's not specific to the Battle Royale. So game experience that you earn playing any of our game modes is going to go towards that same XP progression system, the ticket. So it's not BR specific. The whole point is that you can play what you want, whatever game modes you like, and you can have that unified progression so that you're accumulating your game experience, you're building that clout, and you're collecting those cosmetics, playing whatever it is that you like to play. Next question is, will we see centralized exchange listings this year? I would say to this one, potentially. You should know we don't see it as a short-term priority. I think what we need to do right now is worry about the more foundational components of our game economy, make sure those are rolled out smoothly, they're working nicely. Then we can look into things like exchange listings. We would likely prioritize lowering gas fees by using that Polygon ZK EVM integration that we have planned as a focus before pursuing exchange listings, I would guess. That is subject to change, so we'll let you know if there's any change in our thought process there. I guess my best answer for now, though, is just to stay tuned for more information. And as soon as there's something to share, we definitely will. Okay, let's move on to the marketing questions. So these are coming from Connor. I had him jump in and give me the responses that he wanted to give for all these AMAs, and I'm just going to deliver them to the best of my ability. So thank you to Connor for doing that for me. So question number one is, will the marketing be geared more towards Web 2 and let players fall into the Web 3 side of things? You boys are making it as easy as possible and less intimidating. Amazing. For crypto virgins to explore asset ownership, and you don't want to scare them away. Completely understandable. Hence my question. Will there be a push to show the value of the crypto side? So in general, I think it's really important to understand that our marketing targets people who are going to have an interest in playing Compete. We don't really look at it as any sort of binary Web 2 or Web 3. We don't treat those audiences all that differently. At the end of the day, to bring in people to Compete that are going to be valuable to the ecosystem, it revolves around players of a game. It doesn't necessarily revolve around the payment systems or the way that they interact with the game economy. So I would say that we have a lot of Web3 specific features, which are kind of the core components of our game. So when you say you would understand if we don't want to scare them away, I get what you're saying there, but I don't really think it's necessarily so cut and dry like that. I think that's definitely the prevailing narrative that people would have you think. But really, I just don't think that we've seen a Web3 game deliver the quality that the masses expect in order to want to play it, quite frankly. So that's what we're focused on doing. If you look at games like CSGO and their secondary marketplace, not only are they breaking terms of service to utilize an option which allows them to cash out or to use real money that can leave the Steam marketplace, but the onboarding experience for that is not smooth. It's not easy. You're definitely going to need tutorials. It's definitely a bunch of hoops that people are already showing in mass that they're willing to jump through because they value the opportunity to access the secondary marketplace for their cosmetics. So as far as bringing Web 2 guys in and we don't want to scare them, or are they going to convert and use Web 3 features? I think that's for the market to decide. What our job is, though, is to make sure, like you mentioned, that we're making it as easy, as less intimidating, and as smooth as possible for them. And a big portion of that comes to not forcing their hand. I see a lot of people in Web3, game companies in Web3 that have this idea that the best path forward is to force people to realize the benefits of Web3 before they've had a chance to play the game. I think that's going about it a little bit backwards. And so, again, to get back to your initial question, we're not necessarily looking at things through the lens of Web 2 or Web 3 specifically. What we're looking at and looking for is people who fall into our target market, which again is those hundreds of millions of gamers who enjoy playing the game modes that we're creating and who are currently experiencing all those barriers to entry that we're looking to solve. So that's going to be the most efficient path forward for us to market. And so that's what we're going to follow. One thing that Connor wanted me to mention. Oh, yeah, here we go. Connor also did add that as for the value of the crypto side, you can't trade your cosmetics on the fiat side. You can't buy the super rare cosmetics on the fiat side. You can't collect any cosmetics that had to have been earned or that are no longer available on the fiat side. So at any given day, when you sign in to Compete, the vast, vast majority of all the cosmetics that you could collect, whether you're buying, selling, trading, those are all going to happen on the secondary marketplace exclusively with Compete token. So keep that in mind. I think that's really goes to show you the potential utility of Compete token in the future. And until we get there, I think a little bit of conviction in the benefits of Web3 that, if you're here, theoretically, you see the value of, is going to be what's important. So we'll leave it there for now. Next question, are you considering getting Tim the Tatman or any prominent streamers? Yes, definitely. When the game is in a good place and it's really humming, I think it's logical that we're going to want to attract the biggest and best that we can. And I wouldn't want to put a ceiling on who that is. I can't speak specifically to either of those streamers. We haven't talked to either of them. I know one of them is building their own game, so I would guess maybe we might have a hard time getting them as a streamer. But in general, know that we definitely want to bring in those big level streamers. And what I did want to also say is that, we have a pretty unique opportunity for streamers that they're not going to find pretty much anywhere else. And that's the ability to use that secondary marketplace and to really leverage their brand. There's real value associated with the cosmetics in this game. That makes for more engaging content. That makes for the potential to get value out of your time a whole lot more realistic. It ties you less to specific platforms like Twitch or like Kick. What I see a game like Compete and other Web3 games really offer the content creation community, those streamers, is the opportunity to kind of turn that market on its head. So we have a couple of different plans to be attractive. Of course, as I mentioned, the underlying game economy would be number one. Number two, we do plan to implement some sort of not subscription, but creator codes, similar to what they've done in Fortnite. We've got the basis for that already planned out. Of course, we would like to do partnerships with big streamers to maybe allow them the opportunity to have cosmetics in the game. The options are really pretty limitless for us there. But know for now that while we don't have the specifics planned out, because doing so this early would be a little bit premature, these are the ideas that are floating around, and these are the types of things that we're thinking about for the future. So definitely know that those streamers are going to be a big part of it. When it comes to marketing, who is Compete exactly targeting? Web 2 or Web 3 players? Again, I kind of answered this in the last question, so I'm going to leave this one pretty short, but we're targeting anyone with an interest in Battle Royale or any of the other game modes that we're developing. The game is capable of generating revenue and gaining traction, whether it be from Web 2 or Web 3. And so we're not really choosing to think about it in such a binary way. A game player is a game player, and we want as many of them as possible. So that's how we're looking at it. I'm going to leave it there. So next question, you said Compete is using about 5% of the marketing budget. What is the most efficient marketing strategy that Compete will use to gain popularity and onboard new players? Are you going with just the traditional route of ads? And I'm going to pair this with the second question. What will flip the switch and to start increasing the marketing spend? So a couple of things here that Connor wanted me to mention. Number one, let's clear up a little bit of a misunderstanding here, or maybe just viewing it in the wrong way about only spending 5% of the marketing budget. So when I said that, maybe I could have elaborated on it a little further or a little bit more clearly. But right now, what we're focused on doing is investing enough money to make sure we have the insights we need to be successful in the future. Right now, we're finishing up those final steps to monetize the game. So to bring in players before the game is monetized is a really bad idea from a business perspective. One short, quick idea to consider is that players on your game have server costs. And if they're not generating any revenue for Compete, that's not a sustainable model. So the monetization in a free-to-play game is, it really can't be understated how important that is. And so we're definitely not going to flip any major switches before that happens, because that would be, it wouldn't be a smart business decision, and it wouldn't be a sustainable one for sure. So what we're doing right now, as I mentioned, is getting enough data so that we have the insights we need to scale up in the future. And of course, you mentioned, are we only using ads? No, definitely not only using ads. But ads are one way that games can start to get that initial traction. And there's the benefit of having a lot of data behind it. So we can start to collect that data early. We can start to optimize those campaigns. And this is progress that we can make on the marketing front before the game is monetized. And we're really ready to scale up with the success that we're going to find. So right now, what we're looking at is a return on ad spend. That's kind of the big core metric that we're looking at. Of course, when there's no money coming in, there is no return on ad spend, whatever it might be. But in the future, that's what we're going to consider to be most efficient. Now, with some things like ads, that's really easily trackable with attributes. We can know exactly how many people we're bringing in for our dollar and how much money those players spend. With other things like streamers, it's a little bit more surface level. It's a little bit more of a feel thing than a data thing. Of course, there are ways to use data as well with the streamers. But in general, there's a range of different strategies that we're going to be able to use to scale up our player base. And when you ask what is the most efficient marketing strategy that we use, this is a question that I think any marketer in any job would love to have the answer to at this stage, but is pretty impossible to know. So for right now, just know that without being able to know that in advance, what we can do is get as much data as we can. We can commit to staying fluid and double down on what's working and ditch the losing strategies, right? And that's kind of the reality of marketing. If you talk to people that are real good at marketing, I would venture to guess they'll tell you the same thing. It's a little bit more of an art and a little bit less of a science at times. And I think that can be a little bit hard to grasp if you're not working with marketing on a day-to-day basis. But again, I will circle back to the idea that between Justin and Connor, they have over 20 years of building businesses specifically with their talents in marketing. And so between the two of them, I have no doubt that we have the tools that we need to be successful. But again, it's going to be a lot of doubling down on what works, ditching what doesn't, and remaining fluid in the meantime. So that should give you a little bit of insight there. Next question, are we considering in-game brand advertising partnerships? Yes, definitely. We would love to do all this stuff. It's going to come further down the line, though, quite honestly. We need to attract users and have a user base or a player base to be attractive for those brand sponsorships, at least the ones that are going to end up being meaningful for us. So we're not trying to get too far ahead of ourselves here. We're not going to rush into trying to set up partnerships before our core product is live, it's working, and we have all of our ducks in a row, so to speak. And this is kind of similar to the last question for today. Any strategic partnerships in line with Web3 gaming companies, brand deals, entertainment companies, gaming platforms? Definitely, we would, again, love to do this stuff, plan to do this stuff. One thing that we've talked about quite a bit is potentially implementing different NFT projects with the ability to use or collect stickers, which if you haven't seen, oh no, I don't have any equipped. Okay, well, this is our remote wheel, and one of the cosmetics that we're going to be producing quite a bit of is stickers. If you've seen our gameplay, you've definitely seen people use these already. But this seems like a really logical place to allow Web3 brands to come in and showcase their presence in a game like Compete. Again, this is not something that we're going to pursue, though, until we have at least somewhat of a player base, a core product that is working nicely, because really that is the starting point of any sort of negotiations for that kind of stuff. So not getting too ahead of ourselves, head down right now, focused on what we need to, which is rolling out the game economy, getting those mobile optimizations ready, and then starting to make this game more accessible. And that's really our short-term plans. So with that, guys, this is going to wrap up the AMA and state of the game. For those of you who have tuned in under the assumption that it was going to be 30 to 40 minutes, my apologies. My talking got the best of me. But hopefully this was valuable to you. I think that the AMA questions were awesome. They covered a lot of really good questions. Quite honestly, we love these questions. I think some of them are predictable and understandable. Others of them got us thinking in a way that we maybe hadn't before about what's important to you guys, our community. So really, thank you guys for participating. If you did, hopefully those answers were sufficient. Maybe they got your wheels turning about something that we're doing that you hadn't considered in the past. Maybe it gave you a great suggestion you want to share for us or share with us. Whatever it is, if you have any sort of feedback for us, definitely jump into that Discord, jump into the Telegram, share it with us. Be part of our active community. We really love the opportunity to connect with you guys with events like this and with the day-to-day interactions in those community groups. So really, guys, thank you so much for being a part of it. We really appreciate that you are here. We're super excited, as I mentioned earlier in the stream, about what comes next. We are very bullish on the end of the year. There is just so many pieces coming together that it's honestly hard to even really present in an hour. But what you need to know, biggest takeaway, is that everything's on track. We are right in line to continue accomplishing all the things that we need to in order to deliver on that end vision for Compete. So tune in next month. We'll have a brand new set of updates. In the next few weeks, we'll definitely have quite a bit to say about the game economy, probably some opportunities to start collecting those cosmetics. So keep active with us. Keep an eye out on our socials. Keep an eye on those pinned messages and those announcements. And have a great rest of your day, guys. I'm going to leave it here and sign out for now. Have a good rest of your day and take care. See ya.